Have you ever experienced that despite having everything in life, there remains a subtle dissatisfaction somewhere within? The mind repeatedly returns to the same thoughts and entanglements. And the more you try to understand, the heavier the burden becomes. According to the Upanishads, this problem is not due to external circumstances, but rather the fragmentation of inner vision. The Dhyana Bindu Upanishad begins its discourse from here and clarifies that the root cause of the mind's restlessness, confusion, and suffering is ignorance. And the only way to calm that ignorance is meditation.
The Dhyana Bindu Upanishad does not teach that the mind should be forcibly suppressed or that one should struggle with thoughts. It calmly explains that when consciousness becomes steady and rests in its own center, that state is called meditation. No matter how much sins may appear like mountains, no matter how vast they are burnt to ashes through the practice of meditation yoga. This does not mean an external fire, but rather the clarity in which the light of knowledge itself destroys the darkness of ignorance.
Here, meditation is not seen as a mental exercise or technique. Meditation is a process of inner transformation, in which the mind moves away from its restless tendencies and enters a state of witnessing. When the mind repeatedly begins to observe itself instead of running outward, the burden of karma gradually starts to loosen. For this reason, the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad considers meditation as a solution to the fundamental problem of life, not merely as a means of practice. In this same path of meditation, the Upanishads further clarify what the true support for the practitioner is. That support is Omkar. According to the Upanishads, Omkar is not an ordinary sound, but the fundamental expression of consciousness. The practitioner who begins to understand the meaning of Omkar gradually starts to comprehend the mystery of their own existence. Therefore, it is said that meditation on Omkar is essential for every practitioner who desires liberation. The Upanishad explains Omkara in three distinct parts: Akara, Ukara, and Makara. Akara signifies the gross world, Ukara, the subtle flow, and Makara, the causal state. After the merging of these three, what remains is the Ardamatra, which is beyond word and pronunciation. This is the point where the practitioner moves beyond sound and enters pure experience, and consciousness begins to stabilize in itself. Here the profound science of Bindu and Nada is revealed. Bindu is the extremely subtle center of consciousness, and Nada is its natural flow. When the practitioner is steady in meditation, an experience of an unstruck Nada is felt within, which does not arise from any external impact. Beyond this Nada, when the complete rhythm of the word is attained, the experience of the silent supreme state occurs. One who understands this state naturally has all doubts resolved. The Upanishad gives a profound analogy to explain this subtlety. It says that if a hair is divided into millions of parts, and then a fraction of that is taken, even then the point is subtler than that. When this point also becomes completely absorbed, the experience of pure Brahman occurs. This is not an imagination, but a direct state of consciousness, which can be known through the practice of meditation yoga. The Upanishad also reveals the method of meditating on Omkar in a very calm language. The flow of Omkar should be like an unbroken stream of oil, without interruption and without jerks. Just as the long resonance of a bell gradually dissolves into space, similarly the practitioner's consciousness becomes steady with Omkar. This state is beyond speech, but the one who understands it is truly called a knower of the essence of the Vedas. The Upanishad here gives a profound indication
that Omkar is not merely a subject of chanting, but the goal of spiritual practice. The soul is the arrow, Omkar is the bow, and Brahman is the target. When the practitioner carefully wields this arrow, external actions naturally begin to calm down. The distinction between the observer and the observed becomes blurred, and consciousness begins to rest in its own source. This point of meditation is the central message of the Upanishad. If this thought touches you deeply, do not just listen to it and leave it at that. Reflect on it calmly. Try to incorporate it into your experience and share it with others where appropriate, so that this peace and clarity can reach as many people as possible. Now, the focus of the Upanishad brings the seeker's vision away from the external world and into the body. And in a calm tone, it clarifies that the Brahman we search for outside is the same consciousness subtly pervading this body. Just as oil is hidden in a sesame seed and fragrance resides in a flower, similarly, the soul is equally present inside and outside the body. The seeker who understands this truth gradually attains a steady intellect, and illusion begins to naturally weaken. The Upanishad indicates that the body is not merely a structure of flesh and bones, but a living field of consciousness. Within this field, subtle energy channels remain continuously active, which are called Nadis. From the perspective of yoga, there are 72,000 Nadis in the body, through which life force flows and every action of life is operated. Both the restlessness and stability of life are said to be connected to these Nadis. Among these Nadis, 3 are given special importance: Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Ida is located on the left side and indicates a cool and calm flow. Pingala is located on the right side and represents a warm and active tendency. Sushumna is situated in the center and is the path of balance and awakening. The purpose of spiritual practice is said to be to stabilize consciousness in Sushumna by moving away from the imbalanced flow of Ida and Pingala. The Upanishad further explains the science of prana in a very simple and clear language. Prana is not just breath, but the life force that drives all the functions of the body and mind. 5 main pranas are described: prana, apana, samana, udana, and vyana. Prana is associated with respiration and perception. Apana is related to excretion and stability. Samana performs the functions of digestion and balance, while udana moves consciousness upward, and vyana distributes energy throughout the body. 5 subsidiary vital airs are also described along with these, which control the subtle activities of the body. The indication of the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad is that when the flow of Pran and Apan becomes unbalanced, instability and restlessness increase in life. The goal of spiritual practice is to harmonize these two so that consciousness can rise upward instead of being pulled downward, and an experience of clarity can emerge within. Here, the Upanishad gives a very simple and profound teaching, which is called the Hamsa Mantra. The Upanishad explains that every living being unknowingly chants this mantra. The sound hum naturally occurs when the breath goes out, and the sound sa naturally occurs when the breath comes in. In this way, a living being chants this mantra about 21,600 times day and night without any effort. This chant is called Ajapa, meaning a chant that happens by itself. The practitioner does not need to do anything new, only needs to be aware. As the connection between breath and consciousness becomes clear, the restlessness of the mind gradually begins to calm down. The Upanishad says that there is no other knowledge or chant like this Hamsa Mantra that leads the practitioner so effortlessly towards inner peace.
Here, the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad gives a silent indication. When the breath itself becomes the guru, the practitioner no longer needs any external support. Every breath of life becomes a practice, and the practitioner gradually moves away from external seeking and enters an inward journey. From this point, the path of meditation deepens, and consciousness begins to return to its own center. Now the focus enters the stage of Upanishadic practice, where a deep coordination between breath, consciousness, and body is established. The Upanishad clarifies that merely observing the breath is not sufficient. Rather, it is necessary to stabilize consciousness along with the breath. This disciplined and mindful process is called pranayama. Here, pranayama is not understood as a physical activity, but as a method of returning consciousness to its center, through which the restlessness of the mind gradually begins to relax via the breath. The Dhyana Bindu Upanishad describes the three components of pranayama: Puraka, Kumbaka, and Rachika. Puraka is the state in which the breath is taken in and the consciousness is stabilized with a calm feeling. Kumbaka is the condition in which the breath is held and the mind is focused at the center. Rachika is the process in which the breath is released and the accumulated tension inside begins to be naturally freed. The Upanishad views these three as the sequential refinement of consciousness. The Upanishad indicates that when pranayama is practiced correctly, with patience and without any force, the breath itself becomes subtle and calm. In this state, the practitioner does not require any special effort. The flow of breath becomes naturally effortless, and the mind begins to stabilize inwardly. It is here that the distinction between meditation and pranayama gradually starts to disappear, and both begin to merge into a single experience. After this, the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad discusses the bandhas, which are given special importance in spiritual practice. Bandha means to stabilize energy and prevent it from scattering uselessly. In the Mula Bandha, the Apan Vayu, downward moving energy, is drawn upward, causing consciousness to flow upward instead of falling downward. This bandha forms the basis for awakening stability and inner strength within the practitioner. After this, the Upanishad indicates the Uddiyana Bandha. In this bandha, the abdominal area is drawn inward and the prana is directed upward. The purpose is not to make the body rigid, but to make consciousness light and upward facing. When this bandha begins to occur naturally, the practitioner experiences a special clarity and balance within, and the mental burden gradually starts to lessen. After this, the description of the Jalandhar Bandha comes, which is related to the throat region. In this bandha, the chin is fixed towards the chest, which controls the flow of energy. The Upanishad indicates that when this bandha is properly practiced, the inner power does not unnecessarily fall downward, and consciousness remains stable at its center. This state provides the practitioner with mental balance and deep stability. Through these three bonds, the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad makes it clear that the purpose of spiritual practice is not to cause pain to the body. The true goal of practice is to discipline the consciousness. When the breath, body, and mind begin to flow in the same direction, natural peace manifests within the practitioner. On this stable foundation, deeper states of meditation and inward journeys become effortlessly possible. If this vision feels clear and meaningful to you from within, then as your participation, write Dhyan Bindu in the comments below and like this video so that this calm and profound knowledge can reach those who are in search of inner peace and clarity.
Now the focus enters the decisive stage of Upanishadic practice, where the seeker's journey is not limited to breath and mind alone, but begins to touch the subtle gates of consciousness. In this context, the Upanishad describes the Kechari Mudra. Kechari means the state in which consciousness rises above gross boundaries and becomes as vast as the sky. This is not an external skill, but a shift in the direction of consciousness, where the senses and mind naturally become inward. The Upanishad clarifies that the upward movement of the tongue in Kechari Mudra is not merely a physical gesture, but a symbol of the upward flow of consciousness. When the practitioner's focus begins to stabilize between the throat and the space between the eyebrows, the restlessness of the mind gradually starts to calm down. In this state, the practitioner may experience a growing sense of inner steadiness and detachment from habitual mental disturbances. As awareness becomes more deeply centered in consciousness, rather than remaining exclusively identified with bodily and mental experiences, a natural feeling of stability, clarity, and inward composure begins to arise. The Dhyana Bindu Upanishad here gives a very subtle indication that the true fruit of Kechari Mudra does not manifest in any miraculous experience, but in the transformation of vision. When consciousness begins to remain inward instead of flowing outward repeatedly, the bondage of actions starts to loosen. The pressure of time, fear, and anxiety begin to lose their effect, and a deep stability is born within the practitioner. After this, the Upanishad describes the Mahamudra, which is called the comprehensive and complete mudra of practice. In Mahamudra, a balance is established simultaneously among breath, body, and mind. It involves the coordinated practice of inhalation, retention, and exhalation, which makes the harmonious union of prana and apana possible. According to the Upanishad, this harmony is the true foundation of the practitioner's inner purification. The purpose of Mahamudra is not to entangle the body in rigorous practices, but to stabilize and concentrate the consciousness. When the practitioner remains steady in this mudra and practices, the flow of the Nadis begins to balance, and the restlessness of the mind gradually calms down. The Upanishads call this state Patakanashini, meaning the condition where the effects of old impressions and mental burdens gradually diminish. The Dhyana Bindu Upanishad clarifies that Kechari Mudra and Mahamudra are not two separate practices, but complementary stages of the same practice. Through Kechari, consciousness is directed upwards, and through Mahamudra, that same consciousness attains a stable foundation. When this balance is established within the practitioner, meditation ceases to be an effort and becomes a natural experience. It is from here that the Upanishad prepares the seeker for the next stage. When the body, breath, and mind become steady in the same rhythm, the gate of the heart lotus within consciousness begins to slowly open. Further, the Upanishad reveals the profound secrets of self-realization through the states of this heart lotus and consciousness. Now, the point of focus leads the Upanishad practitioner to that subtle realm where consciousness withdraws from external objects and begins to witness its own center. The Upanishad states that within the heart there is an 8-petaled lotus, which is not merely a symbol, but a living field of consciousness. Within this heart lotus resides the subtle light of the individual soul, and from there all the modifications of the mind arise. When the practitioner's attention becomes steady towards this heart center, the external distractions naturally begin to subside. The Upanishad further explains that each petal of the heart lotus is associated with a specific mental tendency. When consciousness rests on one petal, the tendencies of righteousness and devotion manifest. Resting on another petal increases tendencies of laziness and sleep. In some petals, anger and hatred arise, while in others, feelings of playfulness, restlessness, or detachment emerge. The profound implication is that the states of the mind do not come from outside, but arise from the shifting locations of consciousness itself. When consciousness continuously wanders among these groups, instability remains in life. The Dhyana Bindu Upanishad says that the purpose of spiritual practice is not to grasp any particular thought, but to stabilize consciousness in the center of the heart lotus. As soon as consciousness begins to settle in the center, the restlessness of the mind starts to calm down, and an experience of natural joy begins to emerge within. This is the point where meditation practice transcends and takes the form of direct experience. Thereafter, the Upanishad provides a very profound discussion on the states of consciousness. In the waking state, the mind is engaged with external objects and experiences the world through the senses. In the dream state, the same mind wanders within memories, impressions, and imaginations. In the deep sleep state, the mind and senses become quiet, and consciousness enters an unmanifested rest, where there are neither thoughts nor conflicts. Only a subtle experience of bliss remains. Beyond these three states, the point of meditation in the Upanishads points towards the Turiya state. Turiya is the condition where consciousness is neither bound to external objects nor entangled in internal imaginations. Here, the witness consciousness manifests, and the practitioner begins to experience themselves as distinct from the mind and body. This state does not arise through forceful effort, but gradually emerges through continuous practice and inward steadiness. The Upanishad further mentions the state beyond Turiya, which is called the pinnacle of consciousness. In this state, all dualities, fears, and limitations dissolve. For the seeker, pleasure and pain become the same. And in every experience of life, the essence of the self begins to be perceived. This is the state that the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad indicates as liberation, where consciousness becomes completely stable in its own form. Now, the Dhyana Bindu Upanishad summarizes all its teachings into a calm, clear, and profound conclusion. The message of the Upanishad is not to escape from life, but to see life with the right perspective. When the mind stops getting entangled in external matters and consciousness begins to stabilize in its own center, that very state becomes the gateway to liberation. According to the Upanishad, liberation is not far away. It is available in this very life, at this very moment, in the form of clear consciousness. The Dhyana Bindu Upanishad also clarifies that the path of spiritual practice is certainly gradual, but its goal is extremely simple. Awareness of the breath, meditation on the Omkara, balance of prana and mind, practice of mudras and bandhas, stability of consciousness in the heart lotus, and ultimately, the awakening of the witness consciousness. These are not separate practices, but sequential stages of the same inward journey. When the practitioner walks this path with patience and humility, the inner complexities begin to resolve themselves. The Upanishads repeatedly indicate that true transformation does not occur through an external event or a special experience, but through the refinement of vision. When the seeker clearly realizes that he is not the mind, not the thoughts, and that the body is not his complete form, then the root of fear and insecurity itself begins to weaken. This is the beginning of self-knowledge, and this is the central teaching of the Upanishad's meditation point. This Upanishad reminds us that peace is not something to be obtained from outside. Peace is the state that manifests when the search ceases. When the breath becomes natural, the mind becomes calm, and consciousness begins to rest in itself. Life automatically becomes simple, clear, and meaningful. This is the state where meditation is not separate from life, but life itself becomes meditation.
If this vision is touching you deeply somewhere within, do not limit yourself to just hearing it. Reflect on it calmly. Try to incorporate it into your experience and share it with others where appropriate, so that this clarity and peace can reach as many people as possible. This is the silent invitation of the Upanishad's focal point. With the same sentiment, hold this Dhyana Bindu Upanishad in your heart.